In this video I'm going to give you the ultimate comparison, showing you what each can offer from the Squier Mexican and American precision basses. Hi guys, I'm Tyler and you're watching the TJS Bass channel. This is my first video of 2020 and you'll be able to see there are a few set changes that have gone on. I've now got the Aguilar rig set up here next to me, and that's what I'm going to be running through for the demos. And yeah, I've got some new lights, so hopefully that's going to improve your experience and make these videos look a whole lot better, more professional, and allow you to see better detail all of the basses and gear that I review. So in this video I'm going to show you all you need to know about the Squier Mexican and American precision basses. This video is in collaboration with Langley Guitar Centre here in the UK. All the basses that you see in this video, they are available in store right now, and I will leave a link to them all in the description below. If by the time you get to the description and click the links, they're sold if you're watching this in the future. They have a ton of stuff in all the time, so do check out the website and I'll leave a link to that as well. So for this video I've got 3 precision basses. I'm going to run you through the specs of each. I'm going to run you through how they sound all individually, so you hear them soloed, and then I'm going to put them head to head with a mix with drums, so you can hear what they sound like back to back. So you can hear how the Mexican one sounds, how the Squier sounds, and how the American professional precision sounds, and you'll be able to tell straight away what the differences are in the tone. So in this comparison I've got the American professional series, which is what I've got in my hands here. I've got the Fender Player Series Mexican precision bass, and then I've got a Squier CV60s precision bass. That's the classic vibe 60s. Slight difference there obviously, with the CV being more of a throwback to a retro type sound, and the Player and the Professional series being the modern Fender, the Fender of the current era. But I think there are quite a lot of interesting features of the Squier that don't make it really a truly vintage instrument, and I think it does have a place in the lineup. Also, the Squier is closer in price to the Mexican bass, and then the Mexican bass and the Professional obviously is the next step up within the lineup. I thought that would be a more telling comparison than the cheapest Squier, and also the Guitar Centre just didn't have one in at the time, so I thought I'd do this comparison and show you the build features, the quality of each, and what's similar and what's different, and then ultimately you get to hear them all and decide which you think is best. So now that's out of the way, let's get on to the comparison of each of these basses. I'm going to start off with the specs. This is the American Professional here, which has the modern fluted tuners, which you would have seen in my jazz bass video if you watched that recently. These have got a slight flute, which helps with the winding of the string. They've also got this really cool F logo on the rear. I really like these style of tuners. I think they're pretty cool. And then you've got kind of a classic Fender decal, just the Fender and the precision bass written alongside it. Next we have the CV precision bass. This has got open gear style tuners with a slight flute actually. These are slightly fluted, whereas the Mexican ones aren't. And open gear on the back, as you can see. You have the little design and back by Fender, crafted in Indonesia logo here, and a very similar logo to that on the American Professional series. Next we have the Player Series precision bass, and the headstock on that, slightly different again. These are classic open gear tuners, not too much of a flute at all. Classic Fender tuners, and then on the back, slightly different back plate to most of these tuners, but they're open gear again, as I say. And then you have the Made in Mexico logo alongside here. Moving down the body, on the Player Series you have a synthetic bone nut, so that's a form of plastic, and the truss rod access is at the top of the neck. On the American Professional series you're getting a bone nut, and then on the Squier, while it says online that it comes with a bone nut, to me this looks like more of a synthetic bone nut as well. On the Squier, the neck material, we have a maple neck and then an Indian laurel fingerboard, which is a replacement for Rosewood, which is why it has this slightly greyer look. I don't know if that comes across on camera, but it's slightly greyer than a Rosewood. And then the tint on the outside of the fretboard is more of a roasted maple look. On the American Professional series, this Olympic White model has a maple neck and then a Rosewood fingerboard, but it's also available in maple. On the Squier, you're getting a maple neck and maple fingerboard, but you can also get this with a Pal Ferro fretboard too. On the Player Series you're getting medium jumbo frets, whilst on both the Professional and the Squier basses you're getting tall narrow frets, so they're slightly thinner and again have slightly higher profile, which is designed for easier vibrato and those kind of techniques. Moving down to the body, on the Professional series you're getting an older body with a V-mod pickup a volume and a tone control as well. And then at the bottom of the body you have the bridge, which is a higher mass bridge, so it should increase the sustain, as well as string through the body stringing. Access to the truss rod is available here at the base of the neck. On the Player Series, you're getting an older body again, an Alnico 5 pickup, which is part of the Player Series pickup range, volume knob, tone knob, input jack. And on the bridge we have a classic Fender style design, just a classic Fender bent bridge. On the body of the Squier, getting the Alnico precision bass pickup, which is a Squier Fender design product, volume, tone, and then the same bridge as you find on the Player Series basses as well. Those are the specs of the bass, but I want to also go through and give you an idea of the necks on each, because I think that's probably the most important thing about a bass. With the Squier, we are getting a modern C shape, is what they say, which is why, as I said earlier, I don't really feel like the CV range are vintage design instruments. They have heritage elements of the vintage instruments, but they're not really designed to be vintage style like, say, the original series by Fender. So this neck profile is more P-bass than jazz, of course, but it's a lot slimmer than a number of P-bass profiles. It doesn't really thicken out as you come up towards the 12th fret and up to the top end of the neck, so it kind of stays pretty much the same. Fairly slim front to back, but definitely in the pre-bass side of things. If you play jazz bass, usually this is going to feel quite big to you. But yeah, a really nice neck profile, fairly easy to play. Moving to the Player Series bass, this is a similar profile to the CV, but not the same. It's a little bit thinner front to back, but chunkier down here in comparison to the profile up here at the 12th fret. It definitely kind of slims out and widens out as you come towards the 12th fret. Definitely a more modern feel in terms of the profile, would get you closer to a jazz bass, particularly as you come up to the 12th fret. Last but not least is the Professional Series, which has, as they call it, the 1963 profile neck. And me being a fan of vintage precision basses and just P-basses with massive necks, this is much more to my liking, and it does more what I'd expect a P-bass neck to do. This is still fairly slim down at the bottom of the neck, down on the 1st and 3rd frets, that kind of range. It's fairly slim, but feels a little bit rounder in the hand. And then as you come up towards the 12th fret, it certainly thickens out and rounds out, which I really like the feel of. But it's definitely more of a challenge to play if you want to play really fast stuff and nip around on the neck, and you're less experienced. I think it's easier to play one of the other two basses necks, but I love the tone of a big thick neck on a bass, and this feels much more exciting to me and how I'd rather have my precision bass necks. So those are the specs of the bass. As you can see, there are some similarities and there are some definite differences between them, and we're going to hear how those similarities affect the tone in this section here. So now I'm just going to run you through each of the tones with the pickups full and rolled off, so you can hear what they sound like. I'm going to start with the Squier. This is with the tone on full and the volume on full too. This is with the tone rolled off. This is the Player Series precision bass with the tone and volume up on full. And this is the tone rolled off. This is the American Professional precision bass with the volume and tone up on full. This is the Professional Series bass with the tone rolled off. So that's the comparison with the tone side. Let me know which you think sounded best in the comments below now, and then I'm going to move on to the comparison of these tones back to back and onto the drums. So that was my tone comparison of those three basses. Let me know which you thought sounded best in the comments below. I'll just give you my conclusions on the basses now and let you know which one of them I would buy. So all three are really good precision basses. I think there's obviously a difference in quality and there's a big difference in price between the Squier, the Mexican, and then finally the American Pro Series. I think my conclusions on this are going to be pretty much the same as my conclusions between the Mexican jazz bass and the American Pro Series jazz bass as well. But there is a slight difference in the way that these are voiced, so let's get into that now. With the Squier, I think you're getting a really good vintage interpretation of an instrument, but it's not really a vintage instrument at all, to be honest. The choice of pickup being Alnico, I think, has a darker top end and a more thickness to the low mids and bottom end, which I think makes it sound vintage and gives it that vintage sound, whilst it retains quite a modern feel. It's not really a vintage feel to me. I think the fretboard edges have been rolled much more than on the Mexican basses, which is something I was surprised by. But I think the way in which it's done is not quite as refined as you find on the American series. So it's just not quite as smooth, but it's definitely more curved, which makes it feel a little bit easier to play. And actually, out of the playability of them all, I thought the Squier came second out of them. I think the Squier is set up pretty well out of the box, surprisingly well for an instrument of its price. And again, tonally, I think it is definitely on that warmer side of the spectrum, but it's not really a vintage feeling instrument. The weight is not too bad. It has a poplar body instead of an alder body, which is cheaper than alder, but you wouldn't really notice on the tonal side of things. But I think it's quite a dark sounding P-bass overall. If you're looking for a P-bass, this is definitely a good way to go, definitely on the cheaper end. It does feel more like a P-bass. It's more like a P-bass than a jazz bass, but it doesn't feel like a proper vintage P-bass. So if that's one of the things you're worried about, having a massive neck or something like that, that's really not the case. And it's definitely a good introduction into the precision bass world. When it comes to the Player Series precision bass, I personally don't find this one the easiest to play. I prefer a thicker P-bass neck profile, and this is actually really quite a thin profile overall. Particularly when I was playing, I found it actually the most difficult of the three to play. But that's because it's set up quite low, which is not how I have mine set up, and again the neck's quite thin. I think the quality of the instrument is very good. I think this Tidepool finish is really pretty. I really like that. And I thought the range of tones was surprisingly modern for Fender P-bass. Whereas last week playing the Player Series jazz bass, the low mids were a lot more present, which gave it quite a more vintage sound. I felt that this Player Series precision bass actually has quite a modern sound. It's not quite so heavy in the bottom and deep lows, and it's got a little more high mid presence and treble presence. Obviously the fretboard is going to have an effect on that, but yeah, I thought that was an interesting factor. The other thing I would say is this bass is incredibly light, so if you're after a light precision bass, definitely check this one out on the website because it's really, really light. Compared to the other two precisions in this comparison, it's a much lighter weight bass. When it comes to those little things that I talk about, like the edge of the fretboards and those things that add the value that you spend on an American instrument, these Mexicans are fairly sharp in terms of the way that the fretboard is cut, but it's not sharp in an uncomfortable way. It's just a very clean, crisp edge. The frets have been nicely done. There's not a single sharp fret on this instrument, and they're nicely done, but they're not as tapered as you find on the American series basses. Finally, we have the professional bass, and this is the bass that I would go for out of these three. The primary thing for me is that feel and the neck profile on this bass. It's much more like what I like as a precision bass player, and I like the vintage precision basses. And just playing this in the tone demo comparison, I found it the easiest bass to play. It's set up quite high for most people, but that's how I like a P bass, so I can really dig into it. I thought the range of tones on this instrument were quite significant. I felt like when you roll the tone off, this had a really thick bottom end and low mid presence, which is what I really like. And then with the tone rolled all the way up, it was allowed to be quite bright and fairly modern. And I think that's really a feature of these professional series basses, whether you're looking at a jazz bass or a precision bass. They both have this quality within the pickup that the tone control has a lot of an effect on the tone, and the way that it can become, it's almost like a filter as well as just being a tone. It's not, but the way that the pickups are voiced means that it goes from being a very defined modern sound to a very punchy, low mid, full bass sound when you roll the tone off. The one thing I thought was that when it was soloed, I didn't really enjoy this instrument so much, but in the mix with the drums, I felt like it sat really nicely and really filled it out, which is exactly how I like a P-bass to feel and sit. Again, with the craftsmanship, there's not a single sharp fret edge on it or anything like that. and the fingerboard is really nicely rolled. It's well done. You can tell it's more of a precision process and a lot more time has been spent on it. The one other thing I'd say is that this bass has the graphite rods in the neck, so if you're a touring professional and you're going to be playing in lots of different climates and climate extremes, this is probably the bass that you need to be playing with. So that was my comparison of the Fender Precision Bass, the Squier model, a Mexican model, and the American Professional series as well. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. What was your favourite sound? Would the feel and build quality push you to one of the higher priced basses, or do you think the Squier was a great sounding and looked like it could be a great feeling bass for you? Let me know that kind of stuff in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. It was in collaboration with Langley Guitar Centre. All three of those basses are going to have links in the description and a link to their website too. So if you want to check out these basses specifically or other Fender products, check out their website and pop in if you're local. This was my first video of 2020, so Happy New Year to all my subscribers. And here's to many more videos in the coming months. If you like this video, consider hitting that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that notification button too. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around soon.